I am a regular office worker in my 20s. I am not married and don't even have a boyfriend. I work all day, every day, and have not had the chance to meet anyone. My company is a typical exploitative company, and I always return home by the last train. I hardly have any days off. I had been working as a part-time customer service worker since I was a student, and I always wanted to work where I could interact with people. So when I graduated from college, all I wanted to do was work in sales. My friends were surprised to see me willingly choosing sales, famous for being a hot job. But even after I actually started working at the company, I enjoyed working there because I felt it was very rewarding at the beginning. I really enjoyed interacting with customers. It was my pleasure to see their happy faces and hear them say thank you to me. But after 2 or 3 years passed, I no longer had time to think about that. Subordinates came in, and I was responsible for instructing newcomers. In addition to that, I had my own work. Moreover, when I turned 25 years old, I took on a new position, so I had to be involved in that as well. Instead of getting used to the job and becoming more comfortable, my responsibilities piled up, and it became more demanding. But the feeling that my boss expects me to do my best still inspires me to work harder. I managed to work every day, but somewhere along the way, I knew that I was nearing my physical and mental limits. Then one day, I was walking my usual route to the station. As I was walking up the pedestrian bridge on my way to the station, a child running from the front slipped. I quickly caught the child and fell down the stairs. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. It seemed I had lost consciousness. "Oh, I have to go to work," I said to myself. "You can't do that." I heard a voice nearby. "Who is it?" I turned my head towards the voice and saw a doctor standing there. He seemed to have heard what I said. "You must have hit your head when you fell down the stairs and you had a concussion and passed out. It's not life-threatening, but you need to rest for a while. You also have a broken leg, so it will take a month or 2 for full recovery." Then the doctor left the room. Finally, my foggy head became clear and I remembered what had happened to me. Later, I heard that the child I hit only suffered a grazed wound. She came to visit me later with her parents. I would be hospitalized overnight. This means that I cannot go to work today. I can go to work after tomorrow, but I won't be able to run around on business as usual. I let out a sigh. This sigh was not because of the injury, but because I thought of the trouble I would cause to the company due to my absence. With the doctor's permission, I called my boss and explained the situation. My boss sighed and seemed clearly annoyed, although he said that I had no choice. I know firsthand how busy the company is right now, so I can fully understand why my boss was like this. However, I still felt sad to be treated in this way when I was in such a weakened state after the accident. To my boss, I said, "I am truly sorry for causing you any trouble," and apologized several times before hanging up the phone and going to sleep so that I would not have to think about unpleasant things. I've been so busy at work lately that I always take the last train home and go to bed at almost 2 a.m. I had to be at work by 7 in the morning, so I couldn't get a good night's sleep or any free time to do anything. My own home became a place where I just sleep, mostly for a few hours. I decided to take a good rest while I was in the hospital. I just closed my eyes except for meal times. I was able to rest physically and mentally. I haven't slept this well in a long time. The next day, the final checkup came out clear, so I was allowed to leave the hospital. The doctor told me, "There is no problem if you go back to work, but please do not overdo it." That's all he said. I called my boss and told him that I was discharged from the hospital. He asked me to come in tomorrow as soon as possible. He told me that there are jobs that can be done even with crutches, so he wanted me to come in right away. Because I had never thought or questioned much about it, I was in a machine-like rhythm at work every day. But once I left that rhythm, I felt really bad about returning to my busy life. I wonder if I'll be okay like this. My boss was still in a bad mood on the phone. I was thinking about that on the way home. It was my first time walking with crutches, but I gradually got used to it as I walked slowly. At the beginning, I thought I might be able to make it, but it took me 2 hours to get home. It usually takes me about 30 minutes to get there. My arms and shoulders were sore, and when I arrived home, I was exhausted. I rested on the sofa for a while. In the evening, I got hungry, so I headed to the kitchen to make a simple dinner for the time being. But my crutches got caught on the table leg and I fell down. It is quite difficult to use crutches in a small house. I had to cook, but there was no way I could do it while on crutches. I had to stand on one leg most of the time. At the beginning, I had no problem at all, but as time went by, it became tougher and tougher. I managed to finish preparing my supper, but then another problem arose. I had to take my dish from the kitchen to the dining table. But now I cannot walk without crutches. If I use crutches, my hands are full. I cannot hold a plate with food on it. So I decided on a strategy of balancing on crutches with only one hand and advancing one step at a time with one leg. I proceeded to be careful not to spill the food while balancing myself. Things were going well in the beginning, but I got distracted halfway through and lost my balance. I was able to hold onto the dining table and avoid falling, but I did drop a plate. The plate didn't break, but the food spread on the floor. It was a disaster. I almost cried and cleaned up the mess. I didn't feel like cooking anymore, so I decided to go to a nearby convenience store to get some food. It was a 10-minute walk to the convenience store. At my current speed, it would take me about 20 minutes. But I was hungry and there was no way I was not going to eat. I have to be prepared for work tomorrow. I headed to the convenience store, but as expected, it took me 20 minutes to get there. By the time I got home, I was so exhausted that I forgot that I was hungry. After that, every single action I usually do without thinking, such as taking a bath or getting ready for bed, has become an ordeal for me. It's my home that I am used to, but it was incredibly difficult just because I had a broken leg. It felt like a place I didn't know. Then I managed to get ready for bed and tried to sleep earlier. I was tired, but for some reason I could not fall asleep. The depressing thought of going to work tomorrow, which would take more than twice as long as usual, weighed heavily on my mind. The fact that my boss would be sarcastic with me, and that I would definitely be late getting home because I couldn't work effectively as usual, added to my stress. No one seemed to care about me, even though I was injured and my mind was becoming more and more exhausted. But I knew I couldn't continue to feel this way. I am a working adult, so I have to manage on my own. I did not tell my parents that I was injured because they live far away from me. I didn't want them to worry. In the end, I couldn't sleep for more than a few hours because I was thinking about too many things. The next day, I woke up and checked the clock as usual. Then I realized that I had made a mistake. Out of habit, I had set my alarm for the same time as usual. Usually, I have some spare time, but with my current pace, I would never make it on time. Sure enough, I was walking slower than usual, even though I thought I was walking at a brisk pace. I looked for a cab on the way, but couldn't find one. I barely made it onto a train that was much later than my usual. As a result, I was about 30 minutes late. Of course, I made a phone call on the way to the office, but my boss gave me a stern warning right in front of my subordinates. Do you think you can get away with anything just because you have a broken bone? You missed 2 days of work, and you're late again today. Are you going to do your job, or what? I heard that during the 2 days I was absent, some people, including my boss, were working so hard that they could not even catch the last train. I am truly sorry. Apologizing is all I could do. My subordinates were silent behind me, looking at me awkwardly. After my boss scolded me, I tried my best to finish my work that had piled up yesterday and the day before yesterday, but I can hardly make any progress with this leg. Even though I work at a desk, I have to make copies, go looking for documents, and use my feet more than I expected. And if it only hindered my own work, my slow movement was getting in the way of others. My boss saw that and said, "I can't get my work done when you're around. That's enough. Go home on time until your fracture heals. I'll give your work to someone else." She said that with a very cold tone of voice. Listening to what my boss said to me, others had a cold look on me. I told them I didn't want to trouble them anymore. They said that it would be more inconvenient if I stayed here. And I had no choice but to leave. As you can imagine, I was quite depressed. Even if I try to make up for the trouble I have caused, I end up causing even more trouble. I felt as if I was being denied Everything I had worked so hard for in the past 8 years since I started working there. I left work on time, and it took twice as long as usual to return home. I had forgotten about it because I always take the last train home. But going home on time meant that I was right in the middle of rush hour. The train was packed. Normally, I would be able to force myself to get on a train even if it was packed so tightly. But with my crutches, there was no way I could get on the train that was so packed. However, the situation remained the same even after I had to forego a few trains. I had no choice but to get on the next train. I thought I would only have to endure for a few stops, but I was wrong. It was too cramped. People stepped on my broken leg and pushed me. Since it was a very crowded train, the pushing was probably not intentional. But I could tell that the person who stepped on my foot did so intentionally. Perhaps they were annoyed with me taking up space on the cramped train. "Oh, please don't step on my foot." But I was ignored, and I spent more than 10 minutes trying to move my foot away, but I couldn't. I was scolded at work. My work was not going well, and I was irritating other people on the train. All of these things were caused by my injury, but my heart was completely frozen with no one to turn to. As if to push me into a corner, when I went outside of the station, it was raining heavily. Oh great, why do all these unfortunate things keep happening? I almost cried and ended up talking to myself. I didn't have an umbrella today, and even if I did, I couldn't hold it up with my crutches. I thought about taking shelter and waiting for the rain to slow down, but everything was going wrong, and I was feeling so desperate that I decided to walk out in the rain with my crutches. The rain gradually became heavier and heavier. Under the heavy rain, I waited for the traffic light to turn green as I was drenched. People were staring at me, wondering if they felt sorry for me or if it was rare to see a woman soaking wet and walking with crutches. I didn't care what people thought of me anymore. I just stood there. Suddenly, "Excuse me," I heard a voice from a little far away. "Is someone talking to somebody?" I just stared at the red light. "Excuse me? Excuse me, miss?" This time, I heard a voice right next to me, so I turned to the direction of the voice in surprise. I saw a woman about my age with a slender figure and her hair pulled back in a bun. "Are you all right? It will be dangerous if you slip, so please let me take you home." I had never met her before, but she put me under her umbrella and offered to take me home. At first I hesitated and declined, but she insisted that she could not abandon a woman walking alone in such heavy rain with crutches. Besides, she was offering me most of her umbrella while we were having this conversation. She was getting wetter and wetter from the rain. Seeing her like that, I decided to take her offer. She went along with me without complaining, keeping up with my pace as I couldn't walk fast with my crutches. She really did take me home. By the time I arrived home, I felt so happy that I had forgotten all about the bad and painful things I had been through. It was as if her kindness had mellowed my heart. And on the way she told me, "Actually, I saw you before." There was a crowd of people on the street, so I went to see what was going on. "And I saw you lying there. I asked a person nearby, and he said you fell down protecting a girl." I thought, wow, that's amazing. So cool. There really are people in this world who sacrifice themselves to help others. So I couldn't help talking to you. I was kind of embarrassed, shy, and happy, so I couldn't look at her face. She also told me many other stories. She spoke cheerfully and said she was the same age as me and lived close by. Even though we had never met before, I felt somewhat at ease with her. I told her everything from the day I broke my leg to today, as if my mind had blown up. When she heard that, she said, "What kind of company is that?" That's terrible. No matter how busy they are, it's not right to talk like that to someone who is suffering from an injury. If you want your work to go smoothly, shouldn't the company provide adequate support? She got angry at the maltreatment I received at my workplace. I felt like crying when I heard that, but I was embarrassed to cry, so I held it in. When we reached home, I felt kind of sad to say goodbye. Then she said, "I'm Jessica, may I ask your name?" She smiled. I'm Stephanie." I happily answered, and we exchanged contact information. 1 year has passed since then, and I can walk without crutches now. I hang out with Jessica frequently since then, and she has become my best friend. With Jessica's advice, I resigned from the company I was working for. I have been working for other companies as a salesperson for about 6 months now. Unlike my old job, I can adjust my own schedule now, so I don't have to work late to catch the last train home. And I am blessed with good relationships within the company. And as Jessica said, no one is ever sarcastic to a sick person. I may have been stuck in my thoughts in that way for a long time. When I told my parents about my injury, they scolded me for not telling them right away. Jessica taught me that if I ever find myself in a difficult situation, it is important to speak up and ask for help. I got injured and became tired of life and human society, but I realized that there is definitely a kind world out there. Even if you have the desire to help someone, it takes courage to actually take action. But I believe that courage will be even more powerful for those who are helped. I want to be a person who can help others if I see them in trouble anytime.